I would now like to have Dean Allen Berger to the stand to present his report to the community.
Thank you, Martin, for your warm introductory remarks and also for your ongoing support of Augustana's unique mission within the University of Alberta. And Tia and Elizabeth, I also want to thank both of you for your parts this evening and certainly congratulate you on your impressive academic careers here at Augustana. We're very proud of you. Finally, thanks to all of you who have joined us this evening. I'd like to begin my presentation with a few vignettes, stories from the past year that I think tell a lot about the kind of community we have here at Augustana. The first involves Tom Terzin, a biologist in our Department of Science. Tom's research interests relate to the evolution and development of color patterns in invertebrates, butterflies, moths, beetles, for example. Early in the fall, Tom discovered on eBay an extremely rare perfect specimen of Urania sloanus, a gorgeous jewel-toned day-flying moth, perhaps the most beautiful ever. It became extinct in 1895. The seller had a reserve bid of $6,000, and Tom estimated that the moth might fetch as much as $25,000, particularly if natural history museums learned of its availability. He shared these facts with the Augustana community in an email, never in his wildest imagination envisioning what would happen next. In less than 24 hours, staff and faculty colleagues from virtually every department on campus stepped forward with voluntary contributions of over $6,000. As a result, this stunning and rare specimen now resides at Augustana, and it's also here for you to view this evening. After the formal program, Tom will be displaying the moth in the forum near the beverage table. The second story involves Kim Misfeld, Chair of Humanities and Professor of German, who Martin mentioned. Kim was honored this year with the most prestigious award given to a post-secondary teacher in Canada when she was named a 3M National Teaching Fellow. Literally, the entire campus turned out in the forum for the public announcement and a party to celebrate Kim. The part I want to share tonight relates to Kim's public remarks. In discussing her own growth and development as a teacher, Kim made a special point of thanking all of her students, because after all, they were partners in pushing her, in setting high expectations for her, and in helping to create within the four walls of her classrooms extraordinary learning communities. To show her appreciation, not just to her current students, but to all of the students she's ever taught, Kim presented a flower to every one of her current students. Finally, the third story involves our athletics program. 10 days ago, we hosted Color Night, Augustana's annual athletics awards program. There were many reasons to celebrate both individual and team accomplishments, but one award in particular stands out in my mind, and that's the award given to an entire team for the highest average team grade point average. This year, violating an all too common negative stereotype, the award was won by Augustana's hockey team. Two additional facts you should know. First, these young men and their coach, with great determination, set their sights on achieving this goal at the beginning of the academic year. And second, their enthusiasm at winning and the community's enthusiasm for them rivaled, I swear this is true, rivaled what I saw a year ago when we brought the ACAC Hockey Championship trophy to Augustana for the first time in 30 years. So why these three stories? I've chosen them because I believe they illustrate some very important facts about Augustana. First, our values are in the right place. Augustana is a place where academic excellence is supported, is valued, and is celebrated. Second, we have an extraordinary level of camaraderie and school spirit here that visitors from other campuses often tell me they envy. And finally, 2012-13 was in many ways an incredibly special year. To further illustrate just how special, I'm pleased tonight to announce, this is, I believe, the first public announcement, that last week the University of Alberta recognized 3 additional members of the Augustana faculty with 2 of the institution's 4 most prestigious teaching awards. Christine Nutting, who teaches drama, received the William Hardy Alexander Award for Excellence in Undergraduate Teaching, and Doris Audet and Dave Larson, who co-lead and team teach our Costa Rica Field Biology course, received the 2013 Teaching Unit Award. Now, we might chalk up the fact that Christine, Doris, Dave, and Kim all have been honored in the same year to mere coincidence. I prefer to believe it demonstrates an unusual concentration of talented, committed, and innovative teachers here at Augustana. This year's honorees are certainly special, but I feel comfortable in reporting that they have many equally meritorious colleagues whose performance, I am confident, will earn similar recognition in the future. I'd like to share with all of you a few other highlights in the area of teaching during the past year, but in each instance, these tend to be group or faculty-wide, not individual accomplishments. First example. A year ago, our faculty council, in a unanimous vote, let me emphasize that, a unanimous vote, committed to getting early evaluative feedback to students within the first 4 or 5 weeks of each term, in every class, to every student. In addition, they agreed within the same time frame to share with our advising staff concerns about students who were performing poorly or not attending class. As a result, now that we're into the implementation phase, we have a team of academic advisors and student services personnel that is able to identify early on students, especially but not exclusively first-year students, who are struggling with the transition to university or are risking failure in multiple courses. Why, you might ask, are we doing this? The answer is because we know from extensive research that a successful first term is the best predictor of graduation from university, and that a successful adjustment, both academic and social, in the first several weeks is the best predictor of success in the first term. This is just one facet of Augustana's overall commitment to increase our student retention and graduation rates. A second example. A few years ago, our former dean, my good friend Roger Epp, discovered that many Augustana graduates seemed unable to articulate for potential employers the value of their liberal arts and sciences preparation. They remembered the courses they took, and even a fair bit of what they learned in those classes, but they seemed unable to think about their education and their own growth and development in a holistic or a synthetic manner. So Roger wrote a letter that helped introduce our graduates to potential employers. Fortunately, our Associate Dean teaching, Neil Hove, decided that this situation was problematic and needed fixing, and I think Roger would agree. And so Neil asked what Augustana faculty could do to help students track their own learning and see connections in their learning across classes and across the trajectory of their academic programs. The initiative that Neil embarked upon was electronic portfolios. He did so by enthusiastically selling the idea and recruiting a cohort of interested faculty for a pilot project. In early May, Neil and his colleagues will be reporting on this project, and I'm confident that if we can put the needed resources into faculty development and faculty support, this initiative will catch on and eventually could become an integral part of every student's academic experience at Augustana. My final example. 2 years ago, just before I arrived at Augustana, the faculty underwent what the U of A calls a unit review, an assessment of our quality that involved a rigorous self-study and a visit by outside evaluators. At the conclusion of the unit review, the visiting team concluded, quote, "Augustana is on the right path and should push ahead confidently." But they also offered up some constructive criticisms. One concern they raised was assessment, particularly with regard to Augustana's commitment to what we call our skills requirements: information literacy, critical thinking, speaking, and writing. How well are we doing in these areas? What are our students achieving by the time they graduate? Where is their need for improvement? As surprising as it might sound, we didn't have answers to these kinds of questions, and neither do most university faculties, because believe it or not, we are neophytes when it comes to program-level assessment. Soon, I'm pleased to say, that will no longer be the case at Augustana. During the past year, our former Associate Dean, Teaching and Research, Paula Marintet, led a faculty task force to reevaluate and clarify our skills requirements, to re-express them in language that is assessment-friendly, and to develop a protocol for coordinated faculty-wide assessment. Their work was approved in a preliminary vote by the faculty in December. It will now be presented in final form for official adoption at our faculty workshop in May. But good teaching requires not only dedicated and good teachers, it also requires good spaces for them to teach in. I'm reminded of a famous quote attributed to 19th century US President James Garfield. When asked about what defined a great university, Garfield responded, quote, "Mark Hopkins on one end of a log and a student on the other." Hopkins was a professor of moral philosophy and president of one of the United States' finest liberal arts colleges, Williams, from 1836 to 1872. And in many ways, I would argue, nothing has changed since Hopkins' day. The most effective teaching still involves personal relationships. But we clearly can't afford one-to-one student-faculty ratios, with each participant on one end of a real or a metaphorical log. So we need to think instead about the spaces in which students learn and faculty members teach. And I must tell you, here at Augustana, those spaces, both classrooms and laboratories, too often are inadequate. This, too, was a concern raised in our unit review. And so I'm pleased to report on two developments. First, having discovered last year that most of our classrooms are overcrowded with too many desks and are set up to support only one style of pedagogy, lecturing, my first financial commitment was to upgrade furnishings and to redesign classrooms to support pedagogical alternatives that prioritize group work and active student engagement. As a result, last summer we upgraded and transformed 2 general-purpose classrooms. The reviews from students and faculty have been overwhelmingly positive, although some report the chairs roll too easily. So this summer, despite budgetary constraints, we will upgrade 2 to 3 additional classrooms. The second development is of a much grander scale. After submitting our general space program, a review of what kinds of academic spaces Augustana will need as we envision our academic operations 5 years out, and receiving approval in September from the university's Facilities Development Committee, we have been working all year with planners from North Campus and with engineering and architectural consultants on plans for a major renovation and new construction to bring the science classroom complex into the 21st century. It's currently stuck in the 1950s. This project, likely a $45 million endeavor, is among the university's highest infrastructure priorities. And my #1 job, it seems to me, is to try to get this project done before the end of my tenure here as dean. As you could tell when you came on campus this evening, there's a lot else going on with regard to new construction. The most obvious project is the Camrose Performing Arts Center. Construction for CPAC, I'm pleased to report, is on track, and we anticipate opening in the spring of 2014. This building, as most of you know, is the product of a shared dream and an exciting collaborative effort involving the University of Alberta, the City of Camrose, and Camrose County. Negotiations when I first arrived at Augustana were not always easy, but they were certainly amicable, and in the end, we got the job done. As a result, we now have a joint board of governors for CPAC, a collaborative fundraising effort that has raised in less than 1 year $1.5 million, with $3.5 million still to go, so there's ample room for those of you who have not yet gotten involved. And soon we will initiate a search to hire the first managing director of CPAC and begin the planning for its first season. The other major infrastructure project involves Founders Hall. As you know, Founders is our iconic building, and for a significant part of our history, it was literally our only building. And it has served us well for over 100 years. But it is also showing its age, and we have become increasingly alarmed by its deterioration. As a result, with generous financial support from the U of A administration, we will be embarking this summer on a 2-year renovation of Founders Hall. Founders will see its architectural character retained, while the exterior is redone with 21st century materials, an elevator is added, and the interior is modernized and redesigned. Finally, there are 2 other building projects I want to mention. Both are relatively minor, but each is of enormous importance. The first is the Sustainability Research Station that Augustana wishes to build in collaboration with Alberta Parks and Camrose County at Miquelon Lake Provincial Park. 2 months ago, our Executive Council committed to getting this project done by next spring. To do so, we need to raise approximately $150,000 beyond the money already in hand, and we will do that. I am confident we will meet our goal. The second is an exciting project that Acting Provost Ferguson Pell has generously offered to support. It is a space for our growing population of Aboriginal students, an area where they can gather socially, where they can practice smudging ceremonies, where they can host other students, and where we can run a variety of educational and support programs. We are currently looking at possible, although modest, renovations in the lower level of the forum to create this new space. At this point, I'd like to shift to the future and talk a bit about critical challenges and opportunities that I believe are facing Augustana. Starting with the positive, I think Augustana needs to aggressively promote its brand and its unusual strengths. We began to do that this year with a redesign of the core message on our website. We now proudly proclaim the Augustana Advantage, the best of both worlds, a reference to the fact that students here are able to earn a degree from a top 5 Canadian university and a top 100 world university, while they learn in an ideal undergraduate environment characterized by supportive faculty, intense community engagement, and high academic expectations. Part of the future I envision has us building on our special strengths. Martin mentioned many of them. Things like our commitment to community service learning. This year, over 450 placements in a student body of 1,000. Our leadership in international study, with close to 1/3 of our graduates having had a credit-bearing academic experience in a foreign country. Our extraordinary performance in the area of undergraduate research. Our commitment to outdoor education, with students traveling with faculty guides to learn in remote places from the Rockies to the Arctic. And our community-wide adoption each year of an academic theme that unites our employees, our students, and our neighboring community in in-depth and extended conversations. This past year, our very successful theme, which helped us attract a number of nationally and internationally prominent speakers, was resilience. Next year, our campus-wide theme will be progress. A second part of our future, in fact, one that I've informed the provost is one of my highest priorities, and he indeed has commented on, is enrollment growth. Augustana is already on an upward trend. We've crossed the threshold of 1,000 students, and we are on our way to an agreed-upon target of 1,200 students by 2017. We will get there by improving our own retention rates and through articulation agreements with valuable community college partners, schools such as Red Deer College, Grand Prairie Regional College, Musquechee's Cultural College, and perhaps Medicine Hat College and Lakeland College. 1,200, I hope, is just a way station, as the sweet spot for residential undergraduate liberal arts and sciences campuses, I believe, is somewhere in the range of 1,600 to 2,000. At this size, Augustana would gain important economies of scale, and we would be able to offer students the minimum numbers and diversity of faculty in every academic program that I believe are necessary to claim top 5 excellence for ourselves, so we're not just riding the coattails of the North Campus. To get to this enrollment level, I believe we will need to ask, how can we position Augustana as the baccalaureate institution in Alberta most attuned to serving the future leadership needs of rural and Aboriginal communities? We can't afford for this exclusively to be our reputation, but I believe it will need to be a central feature of our reputation. It will also need to be a focus of our planning conversations during the coming year. That planning, I've increasingly come to believe, may need to involve new collaborations with other U of A faculties, not unlike the very successful collaborations Martin mentioned that we already have with the faculties of nursing and rehabilitation medicine, both of whom I'm pleased to say are sending virtually all of their Camrose graduates into jobs in rural communities. Looking to the future, we will also need to ask another important question. With everything that's happening in the world of technology, with developments such as MOOCs, massive open online courses, why will students even need to come to a brick and mortar campus in the future? Why will they want to come to a brick and mortar campus in the future, say in 2020? For Augustana to have a compelling answer to this question, and believe me, we will need to have a compelling answer. Every post-secondary institution will need to have a compelling answer. I believe our conversations in the coming year and beyond will need to focus on 2 general topics. The first is value added. In a world where students will be able to access content through highly effective lectures, mini presentations, simulations, and games online, what value will professors add in face-to-face classes? I believe the answer is that they will have the capacity to add extraordinary value through guided problem solving, group discussions of difficult or controversial issues, and guided applications of content to real-world, place-based situations. But this will require different kinds of teaching. Lecturing for 50 minutes will become a thing of the past. It will be an archaic way to teach. And all courses will become hybrid or blended classes, that is, reliant on the internet and on powerful learning experiences in classrooms and in neighboring communities guided by faculty. The second topic I believe we will need to focus on is something I call the course fetish. In other words, our tendency in post-secondary education to treat the freestanding course as an organizational unit that receives unquestioning acceptance, respect, even reverence. Why does learning, why does the student experience, I increasingly wonder, need to be organized into relatively disconnected 14-week experiences, each involving 2 or 3 relatively short meetings per week, each valued at 3 credits, and each taught by a lone professor? In the future, There will be courses galore on the internet. There are already. Students will be able to collect them like Easter eggs in a basket or like Boy Scout merit badges. So I wonder, how will teaching and learning be different on a residential campus? How will we work together to create a more integrated student experience? I don't have the answers, but to be perfectly honest, I don't think that's my job. My job is to pose the right questions, to support the needed discussions, and to galvanize the needed participants. Because if there's one thing I've learned in my post-secondary career, it's that meaningful change and meaningful improvement can't be imposed from the top down. As I look ahead, if there's one thing that worries me, and this is where Martin went at the end, one thing that keeps me up at night, it is of course our budgetary situation. I confess that I am mystified and deeply troubled by the recent decisions of the provincial government with regard to post-secondary education. Having come to Alberta from the United States, I have seen firsthand the disasters that ensue when governments begin to disinvest in higher education, when universities come to be seen as serving the narrow purpose of workforce development and economic growth, when the arts are viewed as being of lesser value than so-called practical programs, when bureaucrats begin to sacrifice academic diversity and access to post-secondary education on the altar of efficiency. This, quite frankly, was the world I left behind in Maine, and it pains me deeply that this could potentially be the world we are entering in Alberta. Fortunately, I believe we have leaders in the university, people like Carl and Martin and Indira, who understand the risks and who can persuasively make the case for a different vision. But the struggle is not just theirs, it belongs to all of us, and I invite all of us to participate in it. In the meantime, given the extreme financial uncertainty, I will share with you one last priority for Augustana, and that's revenue. We need to generate new revenue streams. That means new money-making programs, not just during the 8 months of the academic year, but also during the period from May through August. Our campus lies mostly dormant during those months. So what can we do about that? How can we fix that? We need creative answers. But as you can see, I'm back to simply asking questions. Let me close by inviting all of you to join these conversations. My colleagues and I here at Augustana welcome your engagement. We certainly need your ideas. We need your support. We're grateful for the support you've already shown us, not just during the past year, but for many of you over many decades. I thank you for that, and I certainly thank you again for coming this evening.